Hey there, my sugary sweet homies. It is professional chef Ramsay Gordonio here with a guide on how to prepare the perfect trackle sponge pudding that'll absolutely floor your opponents.
I have been advised by my lawyers that I should immediately desist and or cease with that joke, so let's just roll the intro. Anyways, welcome to Pudding Explained, the series where I've done the research and playtesting so you don't have to. If you like big moms and living long, then Pudding is the deck for you. When played right, she can survive about as long as Enel, continually adding life into your pile, while also trashing your opponents. She also gets ready to go much faster than Enel, as she has access to easy ramp to get to 10 Dawn by turn 4. And those Enel comparisons are going to be coming up often, as she really does play like a cross between purple Luffy and yellow Enel, at least in my version. Now, the deck is pretty beginner friendly, but it isn't that cheap. It's not wildly expensive, but you do need to purchase some boss drops for yellow. Unfortunately, while it's quite a fun deck, the play lines are relatively linear, so skilled players can exploit the deck's weaknesses and ruin your day. I'd place this as a solid rogue deck somewhere around tier 2 before the new starter deck's release, and in 08 in the Eastern meta, she struggles a bit against red-purple law and has about an even matchup versus Lucci and Enel. However, in the brand new Lawless Frontier, she is quite a strong deck. Now, this deck should continue to get stronger in the future, as Big Mom has continually gotten support over a number of sets, and as of now, Pudding seems to be a key player in part of the end of the story. No spoilerinos here, but it is likely that we're going to see more purple Big Mom support in the future. So if all that sounds good to you, let's get into the deck list. Alright, so first we have the core cards, starting with the engine that makes us all work, 6C Katakuri. For those who don't know, 6C Katakuri has a very simple effect, but a helpful one. On play, turn the top card of your life face down to ramp 1 active Dawn. But I know what you're saying, for you see, I have eaten the memo fruit, and you may have forgotten, but you've asked this question before. How are we going to turn our life face up so we can get Katakuri's ramp? Well, the answer is quite simple, my little dumpling. Pudding's leader ability is on attack, you can turn 2 of your life cards face up to ramp 1 rested Dawn, and as long as we use her ability before we play Katakuri, preferably on the turn before, but more on the sequencing a little bit later, then Katakuri is good to go. And the cool thing with this is if you took one of your life in the previous turn, thus having only 1 face-up life when you play Katakuri, you can use Pudding to ramp again. But what if we don't draw Katakuri quickly enough? I mean, we only run 4 copies. Never fear. Newgate is here. Newgate is great because he has on play, add a card from the top of your deck to your life, look at all your life cards, put a card from them on top of your deck, and then rearrange your life cards into any order. And this is great because A, it lets you put 2 face down life cards on top of the pile, which enables you to use Pudding's ability again. And B, it gives you a ton of information, lets you move around the triggers, and lets you decide your next draw. That was like B, C, and D, whatever. The downside is that he doesn't also ramp us. So if you're going first and you have to use Newgate, you're going to end up on the odd curve again, putting you at 9 Dawn next turn instead of 10 like you'd get with Katakuri. We run 3 copies as he's mostly just going to be a backup if we don't get Katakuri, and a way to rearrange triggers so some important ones end up on the bottom. But what if we could have a card that could turn your life face down but also was a blocker? Well, use your special eyes to look at Viola, a 2-cost blocker that has on play, turn all your life face down or look at your opponent's life and rearrange them into any order. Basically, Viola is another backup to make sure that we stay on curve, but she's also going to help in the endgame by giving you information about your opponent's triggers. She's not going to be very helpful in the matchups where she can be easily removed, but she's a counter, she is cheap, and you can still use her second effect in those matchups, which is easily worth the 2 Dawn, so we are running 3 copies. But what are we ramping up to? Let me introduce you to Charlotte Linlin, the woman who is 100% that bitch. 10C Linlin does not need much explanation, but if you happen to be part of her family, i.e. your leader is a Big Mom pirate, you can drop a 12k attacker that heals you 1 life, trashes a life from your opponents, and then proceeds to steal their soul and their dreams of ever winning the game. So, with proper play, you're going to be able to get her out on turn 4, and that is the big draw to using Pudding over other leaders. But, I see what you're saying. You don't like Charlotte Linlin. So what about the other big players? Well, how about Charlotte Linlin, but purple. That's right! For the price of 9 Dawn and a card from your hand, you get a 9k attacker that heals you 1 life, allows you to remove 1 6 cost or less from the field, and add it to the top or bottom of your opponent's life. Essentially, she's discount Katakuri and discount 10 mob all in one. We're running 3 copies as she does take a big toll on our hand resources, so we don't need to run 4. Oh, you don't like that either? Ugh, you drive a hard bargain. How about Charlotte Linlin? I'm just kidding. We've also got 10C Ace, who you might know from his time in Enel decks. Ace basically functions as a secondary healer, as he also adds a card from the top of your deck to your life, but mainly he's going to be working as a late game cleaner. In 08 in the East, you had to fight through a lot of removal. Now, I'm not so sure what it's going to look like in the West, but here's the plan. We want to get the 10C Big Moms out early to soften the opponent up. We're going to take down their life total, make them use their resources to remove her or to counter out of her swings, but eventually you're going to run out of moms. Look, I know we got a big family here, but eventually we're going to run out of moms, and that is when you plop down an Ace or 2 and take the last life they have. So we are running 4 copies of Ace. Now, we need to be able to get to these pieces, and to that end, we're running 4 Charlotte Puddings and 2 copies of We're Going to Take the One Piece. It's pretty self-explanatory. Pudding searches Big Mom Pirates and Sanji. We're Going to Take the One Piece searches Big Mom Pirates and Beast Pirates. Most of the time, once you get going, you're really only trying to grab more Linlins. So we don't need to run 4 copies of We're Going to Take the One Piece. 6 total searches is usually enough, and we're going to add some card draw and also be getting resources from life, so we really don't need to add any more searching. So let's get into the text. Now, the number one issue we needed to solve is a lack of card draw, as most pudding builds will run out of hand resources relatively easily. Since you need to drop cards in hand to use 9 Mom and you're trying to survive for quite a long time, eventually you're going to end up needing your opponent to hit you to get cards into your hand from your life, and that was a major weakness. So first, we are adding 4 copies of Blocker Queen. He is searchable with We're Going to Find the One Piece. He only costs 5 Dawn, so we can use him on turn 3. He blocks, and the draw 2 trash 1 lets us drop a dead card in exchange for something more useful. Now, while you can use him on turn 3, more often than not you're using him in the late game, as going Dawn minus early can slow down your momentum a lot. And he's also going to help us a bit in the Reiju matchup, as he is a blocker that cannot be removed by Niji's effect. The second solution is something that I have seen no other build use, but I have found it to be exceptionally helpful in almost every matchup. You may not be able to use her in the early game, but once most decks catch up to our Dawn level, they're just going to stay there. So 4-cost Reiju works if both of you have 10 Dawn, so she is just a 4-cost Pot of Greed with 5,000 attack, and we run her at 3 copies, but this ratio is extremely flexible. Reiju works better in the late game, but if you prefer having the draw work anytime, then you could maybe drop her down to 2 copies, replace the 3rd copy with something else. With those 2 cards, Queen and Reiju, we solve the resource problem. Now the second problem we have versus the meta decks is a lack of removal, and to solve this we are running 2 main cards. First, Hakai Ocean Supremacy, or in Japanese it's just Hakai. This was a much more important card when Red Purple Law was around, but it also offers us a way to deal with decks that play a lot of those mid-cost bodies, like Blue Doflamingo. We're running 2 right now, but after he gets a starter deck, you should be raising this up to 3 copies. Now the second slot used to be 2 copies of Kaido and Linlin. This was here to help us deal with Lucci. Lucci was an issue as he gets a lot of characters out on the field, and once he does that, you can be easily overwhelmed. And the way to win that matchup was just to drop more high-cost characters than he could remove. So Kaido Linlin worked both as a board wipe to help you reset, and another 10-cost big hitter that they had to remove. However, now that Lucci has to go stageless, we can actually swap this tag team for Yamato. Yamato is a weaker threat, but gives us a more reliable single card removal. In a pinch, you can also use him as a healer, but hopefully you're not getting into that position. If Lucci ends up being strong enough without the stage, again, this is going to be a different meta than the Eastern one, so I kind of have to speculate a bit, but if he ends up being strong enough without the stage, we would switch this back to Kaido and Linlin, but for now, we're running 2 copies of my man, Yamato. After that, we have some of my favorite triggers, and these are what I'd recommend, but the slots are flexible if you have other triggers you'd prefer. For Capone, I think almost anyone in the game knows how essential Capone can be, so I'm not going to spend too long here, but you're going to be adding life cards a lot, so you're probably going to get a Capone in your life at some point. Getting a Capone in life can pretty much save you from losing the game, and we can rely on it a bit more than other decks. He's also a 2k counter, making him pretty helpful in your hand. The only downside is he's not searchable, but that does not matter. Then we've got 4 You're the One Who Should Disappear. And for those who don't know, if this ends up as the last card in your life, you basically get Enel's leader ability on the trigger. And I love running this in any yellow deck that can add life or manipulate the order of your life cards. And getting this on the bottom of your life is the same concept as Capone. It makes your opponent have to swing 1 extra time, or in Capone's case, make it so they can swing 1 less time in order for them to go for game. Which, if you catch your opponent by surprise, it pretty much wins you the game. Before you play Newgate or Katakuri, you're going to get a chance to see the top 2 life, and usually if I see You're the One Who Should Disappear on top, I'm going to go for Newgate over Katakuri. That way I can make sure it gets to the bottom. It's not going to be a surprise that way, but you still get the trigger, so, you know, it works. Next, we've got 2 Blocker Sanji. He's searchable with Pudding, playable for 3 costs if you've used Charlotte Linlin's ability, but that's not really going to be happening very often, and he's a blocker. Honestly, he's a really fantastic card that I would run 4 of if I had room, but for now, we're only running 2. Blocker Shirahoshi. She's a great tech versus Lucci and other decks that run KO removal. 2 Dawn is this kind of nice sweet spot for us early on, and we're running her at 2 copies, but you could swap her for more Sanjis, Violas, or even more copies of Reiju. Once Dofi gets his starter deck cards, you're more likely going to be facing Gravity Blades for removal, so Shirahoshi does become a lot less useful. I would swap your 2 Shirahoshis for 1 more Sanji and 1 more Viola then, or you can swap it for 1 more Viola and your 3rd copy of Hakai. Now, let's talk about the cards I didn't include. Flampe. She's a 2k counter that's searchable with Pudding and One Piece and offers another emergency way to ramp up, but I think that we have plenty of sources of managing life, and if we leave Flampe out, we do have room for better cards. It's mostly just a matter of preference because I like to have more blockers. It does feel a little bit better over having Flampe, but if you want more 2k counters, Flampe is an option. Also, I do feel that if we are going into a blue meta with a lot of Doflamingo, Flampe is just going to make you 4C Pudding bait. I'm sorry to say, if you draw the extra card, you're just going to get puddinged. I'm sorry. 7 Mom. As much as I'd like to run 7 cost Linlin, she just doesn't fit neatly into our curve. Because of the way we ramp, we're basically skipping the 7 to 8 Dawn part of the normal curve, so this makes it when you would normally use her, it's already later in the game. She's a great AK body, but I do hate that she's a worse vanilla once your opponent runs out of life, and she's even detrimental versus someone like Black Yellow Luffy, since they can choose to just trash the life. If she had a counter, I feel like it would be worth it, but there are better cards we can run. Soul Pocus. Oh, I love this card so much. If you get it on a trigger, it's free, but it is far too situational, and we don't have enough power over our life to get this during the right time. It also has the same problem as 7C Linlin, so really, as much as it's cool to get on the trigger, I don't think we should be running it. Alright, so for the Mulligan criteria, it's actually extremely easy with this deck. You want to have Katakuri or Newgate by your 3rd turn. If you have one of them in your opening hand, you probably keep it. If not, if you've got 2+ searchers or you've got Viola, you keep it. If not, you mulligan. Super easy. But the curve is the more important part. You want to go first if you can, as it does make a difference and it means you can flip your life over before you get attacked. However, if you end up going second, it's not the end of the world. If you go first, here are a couple ways you can play the curve. So turn 1, you have 1 Dawn. You play Searcher Pudding. Turn 2, you have 3 Dawn. You swing 5k with your leader, activate your leader effect to go up to 4 Dawn, attach your 3 active Dawn to Searcher Pudding, and swing for 5k again. Your opponent goes, and since we're planning on using Katakuri next turn, we take 1 hit, and that leaves us with 3 life, with the top life face up. Turn 3, you've got 6 Dawn. You play your 6C Katakuri, you flip the top life face down, and you ramp up to 7 Dawn. Attach the active Dawn to your leader, swing 6k, and use your leader's effect to now ramp back up to 8 Dawn. Turn 4, you have 10 Dawn, you can play 10 Mom. Now, let's rewind a bit to go back in between turns 2 and 3. Let's say in our hand, we don't have Katakuri, but we do have Newgate. In that case, it might actually be better to counter out of the swing if you can, because if you don't, then you're at 3 life for no reason. So turn 3, you do that, you're at 6 Dawn. You play your Newgate, you send one of the face-up cards to the top of the deck, rearrange your triggers, and you make sure that 2 life cards that are on top are face down. Then you're going to swing 5k with Pudding and use her effect to ramp up to 7 Dawn. Now turn 4, you're at 9 Dawn, and you can make whatever plays you need to in that moment. If you went second instead, you can actually just use the same curve, and Newgate just ensures that you get to 10 Dawn since you don't need 1 extra ramp. Basically, that's all you really need to know with going second. But the other problem is you want to be able to see your life before your opponent swings at you, just in case you do have something like you're the one who should disappear on top and your opponent swings at you. If you've got the Newgate in hand, it's a good idea to counter. That way you can then move you're the one who should disappear to the bottom. But okay, let's rewind again. Let's say it's turn 2, you've got 3 Dawn, you have Searcher Pudding, but you've also got Viola in your hand. In that case, you swing 6k with Leader, you ramp. You play Viola then to turn the cards face down, you're at 4 Dawn. Turn 3, you get to 6 Dawn, same plays with Katakuri or Newgate, but you should swing with your Leader first to flip the cards back face up. Then you use Katakuri or Newgate to flip them back down and rearrange them. And then it just continues as normal. Again, Viola is just kind of there to give you another way to turn the life cards face down. That way, you pretty much can ensure that by the time you hit turn 3, you have some way, or I guess turn 2 in the game, turn 3 in the whole scheme of it, because it goes turn 1 you, turn 2 opponent, turn 3 you. You have some way again to flip life back down. And hopefully with the whole visual, by doing this on the mat instead, it's a little bit easier to understand. But from this point, the rest of the game is going to be up to you. Now, generally in most matchups, you're looking to play the resource game. You target their characters and you aim to remove cards from their hand whenever possible. You want to soften them up with the 10-cost Linlins and then get into a position where you can win with the big boss drops. Ideally, you want to be able to use the 10 moms first, but that's not always possible, so just do your best to wear them down with your boss drops. Now here's how you want to handle the most common matchups. For Lucci, who had Eni's lobby, it really came down to who ran out first. Lucci needed to use a lot of resources to remove each of your boss drops, but they were able to do it for a good while. On your end, you needed to focus on dealing with their characters while dropping down your threats. If I had 9 mom and 10 mom in hand, I usually dropped 9 mom first and made them remove her before I played the 10 mom. Adding the 2 Kaido Linlins means we had 13 boss drops, and then they could usually remove about 4 to 5 before they start to run out of steam, so we had to continually draw into the boss drops. If you ran out before them, you would lose. However, big however, now that they do not have the stage, they need to make up the 2-cost difference every time they want to remove our cards. We can stick with the same strategy as before, but now Yamato instead of Kaido Linlin, but we have a much easier time with it now. You will be able to beat them at the resource game, and you do have advantage. Enel is a great matchup for us if we see 10 mom, and terrible if we don't. Basically, your goal is to put them into the situation where you have 2 big bodies on the field. They have 4 or less cards in hand. Then you force them to use their leader ability and use your 10 mom to trash whatever they added. If you struggle with this matchup, it does get a little bit better after the starter deck releases and we can run 6 mom. I wouldn't normally recommend actually putting 6 mom into this deck, but if you're really struggling against Enel, it is a good way to just take over that matchup, because they're going to have to trash cards from their hand, life or hand, basically. You can also pretty much guarantee the win if you have a 10 mom in hand and a Kaido Linlin on the field. Again, this is with the older version. If they are at 1 life, you drop your 10 mom. They're going to use their leader ability. You swing with Kaido Linlin, and you use Kaido Linlin's ability. Kaido Linlin's ability also trashes a life from their life zone, so that goes through before the attack actually does damage. So they lose their last life, and now they have to deal with a 12k attack to the face. So essentially, it's a rare situation, but keep that in mind. So Black Yellow Luffy, it's actually not that bad for Pudding. We have enough blockers and enough healing that we can kind of just deal with their field, build up a big board, and wait until they run out of resources to boost themselves. Then you overwhelm them and you win the game. Bonney is hard if we play it badly. Basically, you just need to aim to get 3 big boss drops on the field before you try to go for game. She can really only rest 1 at a time, and 10 Doflamingo only has 10k attack, so you can pressure him with the boss drop since most of your bosses are at least 10k attack. So, Reiju is going to be fantastic in this matchup as she can make sure that you have enough resources to last as long as you need to. Kalgara is extremely hard for putting. We struggle a bit versus decks that can build wide and aggressive boards quickly, so also kind of like Zoro too, and Kalgara can do that really well. So try to lean a little bit more on the blockers early and really target their characters down so you can stall for time. You need to get up to 10 Dawn before you can start actually building your board up, which means if they're going quickly, you need to slow them down. Oh, Yamato. Yeah, Yamato is super aggressive and that double attack does us no favors. Basically, in this matchup, you need to mulligan to get Viola. You also really need to make sure that he doesn't get the banished double attack swinging. On top of that, you should also be aware of demonic 6-sword long text name event thing since it can rest your blockers. Animo Zoro, this is kind of a neutral matchup. It's just very annoying. If they get the momentum going within the first 3 turns, it can be hard to crawl back. If they leave a Dawn open, you gotta be prepared for shut up and come with us, that card. And then they pull out like 2 more characters. So basically, if you see that coming, it's sometimes better to just not attack and make them play the characters with their own Dawn next turn. Once you get to the point where you are starting to play your 10 drops, you can pretty easily take control. So you want to make this a long game. If they are able to get control early on, you are going to have a hard time. Kaido, Linlin, Viola, and Reiju are the techs that are going to see you through in the mirror match. Yamato to a lesser extent if we're running that instead, but again, Viola, Reiju are huge. Remember what I said in the beginning. Pudding's weakness is that she runs out of hand resources easily. So, you want to make sure you mess with their life with Viola, you clear their board with Kaido, Linlin if you need to, or with Yamato, and you keep up the card draw with Reiju. Katakuri, this is neutral. If it's pre-starter deck, it is winnable but not easy. They will be very annoying about rearranging your life, so Viola is pretty helpful for ramping here. Additionally, you need to make sure you take out the smaller boss drops and be careful of swinging with your characters recklessly if they have their 10 mom out, since they're going to want to clear your board too. You have a lot more long-term survivability with this deck, but they have more offense. Reiju. So I expect that we're going to see more of her in the Western meta, and she can be a bit tough for us. I do think she has the advantage here. You remember what I mentioned with the Kalgara matchup earlier. You need to keep control of their field and pressure their life with the 10 drops, and if you can do that, you've got it. Of course, Reiju, for you, your character Reiju is pretty much useless, so we're going to be relying a bit more on Queen in this matchup. And for Blue Doflamingo post-starter deck, the key is attacking the rested characters and making good use of Hakai. He can get a really good start, but his characters are still going to be around 5 to 6k attack. They really can't counter out of a 10 mom or an ace swing most of the time, so just like with other decks, you're playing the resource game here, and once you have your big boss drops, they can only really use Red Rock, and if they're using Red Rock, they're not doing much else to you. So ultimately, they only get 4 Red Rocks. You got plenty of boss drops, you're gonna be fine if you can make it to that point. Okay, so now we're gonna get into some games that I've already recorded, and the original script for this video was written before we knew the ban list, actually even before we knew the ban list in the Eastern meta, so I am running the slightly older list when I'm doing these games, but I think that the games are still good demonstrations, so I'm gonna keep them in. And then just, if you wanna skip those, timestamp at the bottom. Alright, hello! You all seem to like these kind of gameplay reviews, type facecam things last time, so hi, here I am. I don't know how much of my room is visible on the facecam right now. It's a little hard to see because I keep it in a small window, but if it is messy, I apologize. I have been working 10-hour days for pretty much all this week, so while I am a little tired, this guide script has been in my Google Docs for like 2 weeks, and I think OP-08 comes out next week. I don't know, when I'm recording this, it's very soon, so I just want to actually go through and actually like record this, so it's fine. It's a little bit messy, whatever. Anyway, we're playing an OP bounty game versus a Bonney player. Now I'm gonna get the chance to go first, and you can see my opening hand right here is Hakai, it is Capone, You're the One Who Should Disappear, Kaido, Linlin, and Ace. This is a garbage tier hand. I would never in a million years want to keep this, so I'm gonna mulligan, and you're gonna see that I am actually gonna get a much better hand. I've got Searcher Pudding, I've got the Capone, You're the One Who Should Disappear, cool, whatever. But I've got the Kaido, not the Kaido, the Linlin, the other Emperor, the 10Z Linlin, and the Katakuri. So that's great. I look at the hand and I'm like, yes, we can search. We have our Katakuri so that we can go up to 10 Dawn. And we have our 10 mom, so once we get to 10 Dawn, we can capitalize on it. Oh, it's beautiful. So my opponent is a little bit slow, so we're on 2x speed, but I am going to be pausing just like I did in the Nami video to kind of explain things as they go. Now, of course, first turn, I'm going to want to just play the pudding, search, and you're going to see that we do whiff. Now, really, this doesn't matter too much, but if this were like a Nami video, I would probably go more into this. I'm going to put You're the One Who Should Disappear on top because if this game goes really long, I want to be able to use 10 ace to then drop the You're the One Who Should Disappear into my life. That way I can just have that just in case. Again, it really doesn't make a huge difference because you're usually not going through your whole deck, but it's just minor things just in case, right? It could make a difference. Now, my opponent's going to leave 2 Dawn open. Now, I'm thinking, okay, they're just going to use their leader ability and rest my pudding character, so I should probably just attach 3 Dawn and swing. Now, they don't actually do that for some reason, so I think that was a misplay on their end, but it really doesn't make a huge difference for the game because it is just pudding searcher, but optimal play would have been to use their leader ability, rest my pudding searcher, and then maybe get rid of that next turn. But they're just going to take this, so now they're down to 4 life, which is helpful for me, and we are at 4 Dawn. They're going to swing 5k. Now, I could technically counter out of this, but it would be a really bad idea. We're going to find the One Piece on top, which means I'm going to get a trigger search. And I also have Katakuri, so I only want one face up life card in my life so I can go up to 10 Dawn on turn 4. So I'm actually just going to take it. I'm going to get my search off, and we have Queen. That is the only card we can grab, so we're grabbing Queen. Now, ultimately, I would have preferred to draw into something else, but it is what it is. So they're going to play Eroge, and they have 1 Dawn open. Of course, they can rest my Katakuri once I play it, but ultimately, I'm mainly just playing the Katakuri to get the effect off and get to 10 Dawn. So if they rest Katakuri, it is what it is. So I'm going to play it. There we go. We go up to 8 Dawn, and I'm going to swing 6k. And boom. Oh, sorry. We went up to 7 Dawn. Now we're at 8 Dawn because of the pudding swing. So I believe that they counter out of this because their Eroge stays alive next turn. I believe they counter out. Yes, they do. They drop the Scratchman of Poo. So they are going to play Cavendish this turn. Now, this is a spicy area for me to actually play Hakai because I could go for the 10 Mom right now, but they have 2 bodies on the field, one of them which gives them their leader ability at the end of the turn, which I hate. That is a bad idea for me to keep that around. So that is perfect for me to go for the Hakai. Now, I believe that they go 3 Dawn swing into Katakuri. Yes, they do. So I'm just going to drop, I believe, Capone. Yep. So that I can keep the Katakuri around. Since I am going for Hakai next turn, I do want to be able to swing with at least 1 big hit. So, boom. I return the Dawn. I get rid of those 2. And then I'm just going to attach 2 Dawn to Katakuri. I'm not going to attach 4. Because I'm going to end up playing Viola afterwards so that I have a way to protect the Katakuri for the turn. So, boom, we go for the 9k swing. I don't think they took that, if I remember correctly. Oh, no, they did. Okay, they did. Yes. So now I go Viola. I don't need to flip my life back down because I'm already ready to get up to 10 Dawn again next turn. So instead, I'm going to use Viola to see what their life is. And you can see they've got Bonney, Scratch from Napoo, and Basil Hawkins. Now, I'm going to keep Basil Hawkins on the bottom of their life because it has 0 counter. And this is going to help me later on when I want to try to go for a finishing blow. This actually doesn't end up mattering in this game, but specifically, that was my thought process. I want to be able to stop them from being able to draw into a counter. Now, I believe I put a Poo on top because I wanted to just get them let me rephrase that. I wanted to make sure that they didn't have the Bonney search basically early on. So I give them the Poo. It's fine. We're going to be whittling down their counters anyways. So that's my game plan. So now I pass. They are going to drop, what was it that they dropped? I totally forgot. I just played this game. It was a Hawkins. Okay. And now they're going to swing 6k at me. I could block out of it, but there's really not a huge deal if I just take it because I'm going to play a 10 Mom next turn. And I could use some extra cards in hand. So looking at this, playing a 10 Mom just kind of makes sense. But first I am going to swing Katakuri. I'm assuming that they're going to block with the Katakuri, use their leader ability to either rest Pudding or rest the Viola blocker. And when they block with the Basil Hawkins, they are going to have to drop a counter. So again, we're trying to whittle down their hand resources. I don't expect them to actually take it, which I believe that they don't take it, if I remember correctly. Again, this happened like 5 minutes ago, so I probably should know. But I think that they block it and then drop a counter. Yeah, yep, they do. Okay. So then, obviously, we play 10 Mom, we drop the Scratchman and Pooh from their life. Now, in my head, I'm like, okay, we've got Bonney Searcher on top, and we've got Basil Hawkins. The whole cool thing with Viola, you want to know what their life actually is, and now we've got 3 life as well. So they are now up to 10 Dawn, which is important. When we notice that, I'm thinking, okay, well, next turn is a free Reiju play. But they swing 5k. I'm going to drop a counter because I expect to see like Doflamingo or something, and I wanted to just not give them a free hit. They end up going for the gosh darn Roronoa Zoro. That was the most English version I could have possibly said. Anyway, that thing is a bit scary to me. I am going to want to play Reiju this turn anyway, so I'm actually thinking, what if I go Queen Reiju? Then I've got 2 blockers. But of course, I need to first make them use their leader ability. So I'm going to swing with 12 Mom. They're going to use the leader ability, I believe, to rest Katakuri, not Viola, which is kind of helpful for me. And I think we give them, because they don't block this. Yeah, we give them the Bonney Search. So I could, if I wanted to, swing with Pudding, but that's stupid because I could just block it with Basil Hawkins. So instead, I am going to play Reiju, then I'm going to play Queen as well. And we're going to end up with an extra Dawn, but it is what it is. It really isn't a huge deal with that. And the cool thing here is that we drew into another 10 Mom, so that means next turn I can drop their last life and then swing with 12 Mom. They're going to have to block it, or next turn they have to play defensively enough that they're ready for that. Which is great because I have my 2 blockers on the field. I can prevent them from going with... Then this is the big thing, is I wanted to make sure that they couldn't just go for 3 7 Dawn Zoro swings against like my Big Mom, against my life, and just clearing my board. That would have been a big deal. So instead, that's why I play the Queen and the Viola. I want to be able to stop them from removing 12 Mom, or 10 Mom. Yeah, 10 Mom. Anyway, hopefully this makes sense. I'm kind of just going with trying to get my whole thought process out. I think I feel a bit more comfortable doing this now after the last one, which is kind of nice. But I also talk somewhat quickly, so apologies on that. Okay, so they just grabbed a Pooh. I'm going to make a little mental note of that. They have a 2k counter in hand. They have 8 cards, so I assume that they're going to be able to counter out of my 12k swing, or they're going to block. They go for the 9k versus the Katakuri, which actually to me is kind of fine. Technically, I could have countered out of that, but again, I'm more concerned about protecting 10 Mom than I am about the Katakuri at this point. He plays another Basil Hawkins, swings 5k. I could have blocked with Queen, but again, I think that they're trying to bait me to do that so that then they can kill it with Zoro. I really just want to be ready to deal with them the turn after, because again, they have a huge hand right now. I don't expect that I'm gonna get lethal next turn, but I need to start pushing for it so that they can drop cards from their hand. So, okay. And then if I remember correctly, he doesn't swing with the Zoro because he doesn't want me to attack it, which makes sense to me. But now we're just going to play 10 Mom and then swing with our other 10 Mom. And I think I was thinking about it for a moment. Yeah, but we do that. We swing, and they actually are just going to counter out. They're not going to block, which is interesting to me because I think that they want to attempt to go for lethal next turn. That's kind of their plan, but we have a good enough hand. We have 4 life, so even if they go for the 3 Zoro swings, they would still have to hit me with one of their other cards. Now, if they wanted to go for the 3 Zoro swings, they could pretty much guarantee 2 of those hit if they went like 7 Dawn on the Zoro. But they wouldn't be able to guarantee lethal from any of the other cards because I can counter out of those. You see my hand, I've got 2, you're the ones who should disappear. I've got 4k counter outside of that. We should be fine and good to go. And for them to counter out of that, they were keeping Basil Hawkins on the field so that they can swing next turn with him. But look at what happened to their hand. They're down to 2 cards in hand. That is beautiful for me. That means that we pretty much have game as long as we survive this turn, which in my head, I'm very confident that we will. Because even if they play the Izo, which to me is fine, that's 3 Dawn away, that means it's even easier for me to counter out. They can swing with the 7k. Now, it would be really easy for me to just drop the Capone and Viola and just counter out of this. But the problem with that is that leaves us open to everything else next turn, or everything else after that, because then we're only going to have 3 cards in hand, and that looks much more vulnerable than this is. So instead, I'm actually going to take the first hit because I know that I can counter out of enough otherwise. Now, we draw into the 9 Mom. It doesn't really matter that much. They're going to go for the 9k swing, so I'm going to use You're the One Who Should Disappear and Capone now. And that leaves me with just having to block the Bonney. Now, they only have 2 Dawn that they can attach to Bonney if they want to get 3 Zoro swings. If they don't get 3 Zoro swings and they attach the 5 Dawn to Bonney, then again, we still live because we have 3 life left. So this is kind of the thought process here. We have game as long as we counter out of 1 Bonney swing, which they're going to go, I believe, for the 7k, and I think we just counter it. Yeah, they go for the 7k, and again, I can just counter with You're the One Who Should Disappear, and now we win. So they are going to concede. Boom. So that is how you're going to play against Bonney. You want to be basically trying to make sure you've got enough bodies on the field that their leader ability doesn't really matter for you anymore. You also want to make sure things with, like, early on, I think the Cavendish Eroge kill with Hakai was actually the biggest contributor to the game for this one. I think being able to remove the small bodies is very helpful. Remember that you can't do that with Basil Hawkins on the field because they can just rest one of your characters instead, unless you've already attacked with everything, but that's a whole other mess of rulings and we don't need to get into that in this video. But I'm going to jump into another game and then we'll talk about it in a moment. Full disclosure, there's going to be a turn here where I almost completely throw the game. Because I decided not to count how much Dawn my opponent had, I just made an assumption and I was in the moment, which is a really bad idea. However, this is still a pretty good showcase of how we're supposed to deal with Black Yellow Luffy. So let's jump into the game. Now, like I said, Black Yellow Luffy, we are, I believe, still going first, if I remember correctly. This is one of those things where I literally just finished and we jumped right into it. Mainly, I don't want to have that dead space. That's the reason why I'm recording these post instead of actually recording it live like that, because this way I can at least skip past any boring parts. So here we go. You're going to see we have the pudding in hand and I've got the 9 Mom. Now, realistically, I probably would have Mulligan this against any other leader. The reason I don't is because with Black Yellow Luffy, I don't want to get too aggressive against him at first. So I feel like I'm going to have a little bit of time to actually go through. I see that I've got Shirahoshi, which is actually going to be really helpful because if they want to KO it with something like Rocket Luffy or Egghead Luffy or whatever he's called in the Western meta, then Shirahoshi's going to give me an extra life, which will be nice. So I am going to keep this, and yes, they are going second, so I am going to just play pudding early. I'm going to look for Katakuri. I believe I don't get him. Yep, I don't, but I do see 10 Mom, so we're grabbing 10 Mom. Even though 10 Mom can be a little detrimental for us because it does help our opponent run out of life cards, the good news is it doesn't go to their hand and it's still 12k attacker, which is pretty big versus Black Yellow Luffy. Because even after they boost, they're only going to be up to about 9k, 11k if they really get that going. Now, our opponent right here is going to make, I think, kind of a misplay. They went for the Makino, expecting me to go full passive, which to an extent makes sense, I understand. But the problem with that is that they are now down a life, which for me, I'm honestly thinking that's pretty good, but they also do know their life now. Now, if I had Viola, that actually would be a little bit better here, because then I could rearrange that, but that's okay. I believe, just going to swing 6k, try to make them use a 2k counter. I don't expect that they're going to use a counter because they want to grab life, but either way, I do need to attack to get the ramp off. If I wanted to make it easier for them to counter out, I would have gone for the 5k swing, but to be honest, I wasn't expecting them to want to counter out of it, so I figure I might as well just go for the 6k. On the off chance they do counter, that's a 2k out of their hand. And then we're just going to play Shirahoshi, because 2 Dawn, Shirahoshi blocker, fantastic in this matchup. My life right here, you can see, is Hakai and another 10 cost Linlin, so that's great for me. They have the Makino, so they were able to see that they have a Sabo, and they buff up immediately. Now, they're going to swing, I believe they swing 9k here, and I'm just gonna take it. I could block with Shirahoshi, but I really do think Shirahoshi is gonna be more important later. Again, if this were any other leader, I might have kept that and then gone for the Newgate play so that I had still 4 life when I go for Newgate, but that's okay. So, alright, I draw, and I'm just going to play Newgate first, and I'm going to put the 10 Mom on top of life, because I don't mind just drawing into that. However, at this point, okay, I'm looking at this, obviously there's nothing too crazy, so the life order doesn't matter too much. I figure the Reiju will be a little more helpful than the Newgate, so I'm going to put those on top, and I'm going to swing. I'm obviously, the cool thing about them boosting here and having Sabo is that they can't take this life even if they want to. It's a weaker attack, so as much as they would love to just pick this life up, they're not going to be able to, which is great. And now we are at 7 Dawn. So since we had to do Newgate, we're at 7 Dawn. The cool thing about that is 9 Mom is actually great in the Black Yellow Luffy matchup because you can put any of their characters on top of their life. And if they don't have the starter deck 5-cost Luffy out, then they kind of are in a weird spot where they have to use one of their cards to draw, air quoting, draw the card from their life. But because of Luffy's leader ability rule thing, if they try to use something like a Machina or a Flampe or something, it goes to the bottom of their life. So they lose a 2k and they lose the card that you put on top. So that's a pretty cool thing. That is going to be my plan here. Now, I think my opponent is going to grab their last life and use their leader ability, if I remember correctly. I think they're thinking about it for a moment. Yeah, they used Hiyori, that's fine. There's a 2k out of hand. And they are going to play the Rocket Luffy. Now, I kind of thought they would use Rocket Luffy to get rid of Shirahoshi. However, they use it to get rid of Searcher Pudding, which I thought was kind of weird because ultimately Searcher Pudding is doing nothing at this point in the game. And like, yeah, it helps them draw a card, but they could have done that next turn after they swung with the Luffy, which is a little bit weird. But I mean, like you saw already, we are at a decent bounty score. I think I'm top 50 on the East ladder. I mean, it doesn't say much because there's not a lot of people on the ladder, but I mean, they have a higher bounty than me, so whatever. Anyway, I take the 9k swing. I draw into that. I have my 9 Dawn. I believe, yeah, I swung with this because I wanted to see would they take it or just counter out, because I'm expecting them to counter out with something and I need to reduce that hand size. That is the key to winning this. If they have cards in hand, that is a bad time for us. So 7k attack, yeah. They actually weirdly take it, which I was surprised. I kind of expected them to, like I said, counter, but since they take it, we put one of their Luffys at the bottom of their deck, which is cool for me. I'm happy with that. And then I drop my minus Dawn. I drop the Hakai because Hakai does nothing in this match. If they're playing their Black Yellow Luffy correctly, usually they're going to have a Sabo every turn. So they have KO protection. It's not going to do anything. However, at this point, I'm going to put, I believe, was it Makino or Hiyori? It was Hiyori. I put Hiyori on top of their life. So now they have to do something to get rid of that before they can start using Luffy's ability again, which is, wow, great. I think I mentioned it in the earlier part of the video, but basically our strategy here is we need to just whittle their resources down. With Pudding, you can last long enough that there's eventually going to be a turn where they cannot continue to ramp, which works well for us. Now, I kind of think, okay, after they use their leader ability, they're going to swing, kill Newgate. That's really not the end of the world because, again, I'm expecting them to be at 9k for most of these turns. So having Newgate on the field now doesn't really make a huge difference. They go for the Sabo. They are now down to, you're going to notice it, 3 cards in hand. That is very important. We're keeping an eye on that because they had to use leader ability. I just dropped my counters for that. I don't really want to take that hit if I can help it because I've already decided I'm taking this Luffy hit. Now, it was a little sad that we drew into You're the One Who Should Disappear, but it's fine. Now this is going to be the turn. This is the turn where I basically would have thrown the game if I couldn't have crawled back. Thankfully, I know how to play against Black Yellow Luffy with Pudding, but I'm thinking, okay, they popped off. They probably have 10 Dawn. We're fine. And so I'm going to play Reiju, which is really stupid because they have 8 Dawn and it doesn't do anything. So I swing with Newgate just to try to make them use cards in their hand or get rid of a Sabo or something. They just let it go through, which is cool. I swing with the Linlin. Again, I'm trying to do the same thing. They counter with Sabo. Cool, whatever. And then I could have played Tenmom, but I play Reiju, which, like I said, very, very stupid. If I had played Tenmom, we would have been in a slightly better position. Then I would have been able to play the next Tenmom the next turn, and then I've got two 12k attackers on the field, which would have been way better. But that hurts my soul a little bit. I see it whiffs and I go, wait a minute, what? And I look and I'm like, oh fuck, 8. So, alright, at this point, I sort it because I don't care that Reiju's on top of the life. Actually, it's a little bit better for me specifically, because otherwise I'd forget. So, I use the, we're gonna find the One Piece, I do the search. I could have swung 9k pudding, but then they have empty life, which I don't really want them to have, so I don't end up doing that. But yeah, that was just a bad play overall. They're gonna play the Moria, now they're at 10 Dawn, which this is really bad for me. Thank God that they have only 4 cards in hand at this point, because like I said, this would have been throwing the game otherwise. They go for the Rocket Luffy, get rid of Viola, which is fine. I'd rather them not have it on the field, to be totally honest. And he's going to swing 11k. He didn't attack Linlin, which is, if he had attacked Linlin, I would have used Shirahoshi. But since he didn't, I just take it, because it's fine. I'm going to play the 10 Mom here. And then I think I swing... What, do I do 10 Mom? I think I do 10 Mom, then I swing with 9 Mom. Yeah, I do that. So I'm just trying to get him to counter or block. I need those cards out of hand. And I have my blocker on the field. I have enough in my hand I can kind of counter out of at least 1 hit. And he's only got 3 cards in hand. So again, the whole goal of this is we're just trying to whittle them down. That is the whole job we're trying to do. We are doing a whittle job. We have the wood, the knife, and I'm going through and I'm going to make a really nice sculpture of Luffy. It's took a lot of time, you know, about 3 years whittling on this little wood piece. And I am checking to see, do they have the 2 ace in life or in trash? Because if they do, and they happen to have Moria right now, then I'm taking 5 hits to the face, which I could lose. If they had 2 ace right now and Moria, I would lose. Because I don't have enough to actually counter out of every hit that's on the field right now. Thankfully, he just swings with the Sabo, and I'm like, that's weird. Okay. That tells me you probably don't have ace, or you're just being kind of weird. He goes for the Moria, and I'm like, okay, this is a bit scary, because if he has the ace in hand, then he can play it. But he goes more defensive. So that tells me he doesn't have ace in his hand to trash, which was cool with me. And boom. He is going to use the Luffy effect, I believe, just to get rid of Reiju, which really doesn't make sense to me. But he is swinging... Does he swing on Linlin at this point? I think he does. Yeah, and that's when I'm using Shirahoshi, because I need the Linlin to be able to get the swing in next turn. And now, at this point, he has no life, he has 2 blockers, and he has 2 cards in hand. We've won. Because what we can do now is I can go, I think 11k Big Mom? Yeah, I think it was 11k Big Mom, then 11k Newgate. So he has to block, or he has to use both cards in hand, which he does. So, okay, then it's game. So I'm just going to swing 9k Newgate. Now he has to block or he loses. I'm going to swing 9k Pudding. He has to block or he loses. And then only thing is left is 14k Big Mom, and we win. So that's how it goes. Basically, if you don't fuck up the Reiju part and you check their Dawn before you play that, this would have been a bit smoother if I hadn't done that, but basically that's what you want to do with Black Yellow Luffy. Okay, so this was kind of an interesting one. It is versus a Reiju, which actually I probably should have included a bit more about that in the matchup sections, but to be honest, since Reiju wasn't that big of a deal here with Law just being everywhere, I kind of wasn't expecting to have to deal with too much Reiju. However, because we were running into this matchup, I'm thinking, how am I going to actually handle the Reiju? So basically what we ended up doing here, and I'm going to pause it so I can explain real quick, is basically once we can get enough big boss drops up on the field, we should be fine. But the concern is, what are we going to do about all the Ichichis? Because early on, like I kind of mentioned early in the video, when a deck goes really wide, that's actually going to be kind of difficult for us, because if we're not able to control the board, we can get overwhelmed pretty quickly. So we are going to end up going first. I see I've got the Katakuri in hand. I've got the 9-mom. Reiju is not going to do anything in this matchup except be a 1k counter. So I'm looking at that and I'm like, all right, I got the Katakuri. This is fine. I'm going to keep it. My opponent, I think my opponent takes a little bit to think on certain turns, but that's why we have speed up. So of course I have no searchers, nothing I can do that turn. So I am just going to swing 3 Dawn, 8k, and get my leader ability off. And we see we've got Hakai and Charlotte Linlin, which is nice. I like the 10-mom being in our life. We're gonna get that pretty easily. Moving forward though, my opponent is going to, I think they swing 6k here. Now I have the Katakuri in hand, so I'm thinking I'm just gonna take it. My concern, once they play this Porsche, so they're gonna play Porsche, my concern is, do they have the Ichiji combo already in hand? Because, oh, excuse me, gosh, I had soda today. Anyway, I am a little bit concerned about them possibly having the HEG, because if they do, now I have to drop 3k in counter. However, I would have had to do that kind of either way, drop 2 cards from hand, because I didn't really want to drop the Sanji, but worst case scenario, I'll drop the Sanji and the Reiju. That's actually exactly what they do have, which is unfortunate. They've got the EGG, but the good news with this is they did have to drop it from hand, so I mean, that's something, I guess. It's not amazing, but you know, we take it. Of course, I've got that card face down. If I had taken this, which by the way, yeah, if I had taken this, then I can't really use Katakuri effectively, which is kind of the reason why we want to do it this way. If I had taken it, now I've got 2 life left. I could go pudding first, then Katakuri, but now I'm left in this weird spot where my bottom life is face up, my top one is face down. I don't like that. That's a bad time for me. So boom, we just go Katakuri, we just swing 2k, and boom, we're now at 8 Dawn, which is cool. Because I have the Linlin Kaido in my hand if I really need to, but I'm expecting I'm gonna take a hit here. I see an Ichiji, I see Porsche, and this one. I think I counter out of this one. Pretty sure. Yeah, because I want them to swing 7k with Porsche and 7k with Ichiji. If I hadn't, then they would have just done that. If I had not countered out of that, it was pretty likely that they probably would have swung with the Porsche anyways at 7k. So it just made more sense. Anyway, I had to take both, which was a little bit sad, but the good news is we do have the 10-mom in hand, so it'll be fine. Now, I'm looking at my opponent's hand size, and you can see that thing is taking up pretty much the entire face cam area. That is a lot of cards in hand. So I want to get rid of that first. So I'm going to kind of pretend like, oh, maybe I've got ace, maybe I've got something going on in my hand. You don't know. So I'm going to swing at Porsche, make them try to use a counter. I forgot if they actually take it or not. They don't. They counter. Cool. I'm going to now look at this and I'm like, they have too many cards in hand. They can just go for a 1k counter if I swing Ichiji. So I'm going to swing at actually the Porsche instead, with hopes that maybe they drop 2 cards from hand. But they just let it go. So whatever. It's fine. I played my 10-mom. I have enough in hand to kind of counter out. If they have an Ichiji in hand, we are fucked. Because looking at this hand, I have 2k in counter right now. But this is the power of bluffing. So if you were doing this in person, this is where you need to have the most nonchalant, no emotion face. Because if you give off some sort of signal right now that you have not enough counter in hand, they're gonna screw you over. However, they have no idea. We have 6 cards in hand. We should have enough counter. It's just Big Mom happens to run a ton. Thankfully, this is actually so good for us because they go for the pudding just to try to reduce our hand size. But by doing that, they give us the counter, which actually was so nice. So I was really concerned that they were going to go for the EGG play. Thank God they didn't. I counter out of this stuff, even though I'm going to get a little bit low on hand size. I think it's okay because I'd rather just make sure I can take control of the board now. So I see that we have the 9-mom in hand. Now, I want to use 9-mom because I want to get my life back up. However, the problem with doing that is I'm going to end up with 1 card in hand if I do. So right now I'm kind of looking and seeing like, okay, well, let me see what can I do to the board state. So I'm going to swing first, try to get them to maybe drop some cards in hand. I think they counter out for the Reiju. Yeah, they do. So now at this point, I believe I go, 8k against Reiju. Again, I want to see if they're going to counter out or if they're going to let it die. I think they let it die here. I go 12 mom versus the Ichiji. They let it die. So now, okay, fine. I can drop this. Now, honestly, I wasn't really sure at this point if I should have put Pudding on top of their life. I think in hindsight, I probably should have, because Pudding does have 4k attack. I saw it and I'm like, okay, it's a utility card. I don't really need to worry about it too much, but it would have made a lot more sense for me if I'm trying to go for the board control to put that on top of their life. That way they don't have an extra swing on me next turn, because you got to remember Reiju does always have the ability to play an Ichiji, possibly 2 Ichijis with Porsche. So it can be really scary. And they are going to play the Ichiji. So I'm like, oh, maybe I should have moved the Pudding. Because at this point, now they have 3 swings and I have 1 card in hand, which is pretty bad. Thankfully, we have enough life. I could have countered out of that, but it's fine. I just let it go. And we have to take both. I do think, realistically, I should have just put the Pudding there. It worked out because I drew it into the ace. So it'll be fine, but realistically, yeah, that was maybe a misplay. I'm trying to get rid of cards in their hands, so I'm gonna go 9k on the Ichiji. I could have just gone 10 mom and it would die, but I know I've got the ace in hand. I know I'm gonna get rushed with the ace. So again, we're baiting them to drop counter, which I believe they do, which is lovely. Chef's kiss. Yep, they drop 3k in counter. So now they're down to 5 cards. I'm gonna play the ace here, I believe. Yep. And I'm gonna swing at the Ichiji. Again, I'm trying to get them to drop counter. Yep, and they don't end up doing that, so okay, I just clear it and I go attack the Pudding and it dies. In my head, I'm thinking, okay, well, I've got 12 bomb. 12 bomb can pretty much kill the Ichiji either way, so if they counter out, that's cool. I attack the Ichiji with 12 bomb. If they don't, then I just get rid of the Pudding, and now they've only got 2 swings and I have 2 life. Now, they could play Ichiji, but they've gone through, I think, and this is where I'm checking, I think they had gone through like 2 Ichijis at this point. I'm looking, they have 1. They have, I think 1 in life. For some reason, they have another Ichiji, so I'm like, oh, come on. But if they want to do this, I can still counter out. I will survive this turn no matter what, so I'm annoyed, but not too stressed. So they go for it. I'm going to take... Oh, no, I'm not going to take that one. Whoops. I believe I take the other 2, though. Oh, right. Okay. I was going to take the other 2. I Capone, so that works out. This is again what I was talking about with the trigger part. You do want the Capones in there because I got that from playing the ace, which was very helpful. At this point, what do I do here? Oh, yeah. At this point, I'm going to be trying to just get them to drop cards from hand. If they don't drop enough cards from hand to where I can maybe go for lethal, then I'm going to attack the Reiju. Either way, I do want to be kind of getting them down a little bit here, and then I'm going to play Shirahoshi if I need to. But they drop counter. Cool. Works for me. I'm going for this, and 11k means that they would have to drop a lot. So I'm thinking, okay, I probably have lethal. Let's go for 11k again. Worst case, I can always pivot to switch and attack the Reiju if they can counter out. They could not. Now, I could go for 5 Dawn on this. It's possible. But if every card in that hand is a 2k counter, it would not work. So I'm leaving 2 Dawn open so that I can go for Shirahoshi. Thankfully, 15k attack is enough. They did not have enough 2k swings, 2k counters. They had another EGG in hand, which is crazy to me. But that's how you're going to handle Reiju. It's going to be a little scary early. I think it would be nice if Hakai could do something about the Ichiji's, but unfortunately they can't. So you really just got to focus on ramping up, getting your boss drops out, and then attacking the Ichiji after they swing. It's kind of like when you would fight against like Zoro when they were running the 1-cost attackers, and then they would swing, then you have to swing at them to just remove it immediately after. You're basically doing the same thing here. But instead, it's Ichiji and it's your mom's. So anyway, all that being said, let's go ahead and just jump to the outro, because I have spent too much time talking to you guys, and I really should go to bed because I have to wake up again in the morning. And that's about it. Did you enjoy the meal? I certainly hope so. While Pudding is not the best deck in the world, she is a lot of fun, and I really enjoyed playing her. Until next time, my name is Waffles the Asian Yen Bear, and I know it's been a while, but I did decide to start kind of recording my videos like this, so it makes editing a lot easier. The Nami video is planned to come out next week, but keep in mind that I am not always great about staying on schedule. So, not a hard, fast promise, but I do have the list. I just gotta actually record everything. So, anyway, hope you have a good day, a good week, a good life, and I'll see you next time. Bye.